The European Union is meeting to discuss the impact of the new COVID-19 variant, Omicron. The EU advised member states, countries to implement travel restrictions after South Africa's detection of the variant. SABC's correspondent Lucy Hoff joins us from Brussels in Belgium. Lucy, I wonder then how the talks are going inside.
Well, there's still very much going on and we are expecting a long night ahead. There is much on the agenda, but talks have focused in the initial stages on COVID-19, giving rising rates of infection on this continent, an increasing concern about the Omicron variant. We have had a warning from the EU's executive that the variant is likely to become the dominant one by next month. And of course, European leaders are watching what is happening in the neighbouring United Kingdom in terms of the soaring rates of infection there. So there's been talk of a number of issues, namely the rollout of booster vaccines and tackling vaccine hesitancy amongst the bloc's European citizens, given the stubborn levels of vaccine hesitancy that we're seeing in some countries such as Germany and Austria and France. There's also been talk about travel restrictions, given that we've seen a number of European countries reintroducing some measures for EU citizens, of course for international citizens as well in the last few weeks. But certainly this week there has been a change within the EU's Schengen border. So that has been discussed amid concern from Brussels, the EU's executive, that Europe could once again become a patchwork of travel restrictions. So lots on the agenda. Certainly there has been some criticism of those countries who've reintroduced restrictions this week, but certainly deep concern about rising levels of Omicron and a sense that the variant will become very dominant by January.
And, when one looks at the EU, of course, they coordinate, travel guidelines within the bloc and also, of course, within the member states. But it's up to the member states themselves who then have to decide how much of restrictions they put in place. I wonder if the decision by the United Kingdom to lift the travel ban may have an impact on some of the discussions inside.
Well, certainly there is sympathy for the position that really Omicron has already been embedded in Europe for some weeks now, and it really is just an inevitability that the variant will start spreading at pace. And certainly, as I say, EU leaders are watching the situation in the United Kingdom with concern, given the soaring rates of infection there, with new records of 80,000 in the United Kingdom today. So really, yes, that decision from the United Kingdom has been acknowledged to lift the travel ban on those 11 countries, including South Africa. We understand that the matter has been discussed by EU leaders today and that there is sympathy for the position that the variant is likely to inevitably make its way here, and therefore there should be targeted PCR testing, but not the singling out of individual nations such as South Africa and Botswana. There has also been in the communique, the draft communique issued by the European Council today, sympathy and gratitude towards South Africa and Botswana for their transparency and vigilance in reporting the emergence of that new variant. So whilst we don't have an official answer today about whether the travel ban will be lifted by EU member states, certainly there is an indication that the position could be changing to a focus on PCR testing on entry rather than blanket bans on individual countries.
And the EU is South Africa's largest trading bloc, so no doubt these travel bans have a negative impact on the South African economy. Are you then somewhat hearing that, the economy of South Africa and the impact from these travel bans could form some part of the discussions?
Well, certainly that will be acknowledged by the European Union, and we do, of course, in the early part of 2022, have a major EU-Africa summit, which will be an opportunity to reinforce those important trade ties and the economic relationship between the European Union and the African Union. So this does come at a very critical moment. This is a travel ban that has, as you well know, been in place for some 3 weeks now. Even at the time, we had criticism from European lawmakers acknowledges that these sorts of travel bans don't work in many cases, and that it does have a negative impact on that trading and economic relationship, and does target a country that, as we've heard from that statement today, reported responsibly early the emergence of that variant. So even within EU circles, there has been some scepticism about this travel ban, and it does seem as if EU diplomats from the EU 27 member states have been softening their position, given that we are already seeing rising rates of Omicron on this continent. So I think that the economic relationship will be an important part of the discussions, but of course the focus initially will be on ensuring that if that travel ban is lifted, that it can be done so safely and with a good alternative measure in place to ensure safe travel between the two continents.
All right. Thank you so much for your time, Lucia.